We are live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to bring my guests in, the two combatants for tonight, the two gladiators. All right. Hey, Jason, do you want to be on that side?
It's fine with me.
Okay,
I don't care.
cool. I will be in the middle because for tonight, I am the guest referee, the
Wait,
special guest
so
referee.
so wait a second. Is this the right side or the left? I'm going to be on the right side because that's the wrong side over there.
Well, technically, you're on the left side.
Well, that's right now.
Well,
It's going to
here
be the right
I'll
side.
I'll fix this because you're facing the other
I
direction. Hold on,
I don't
let me
like the
fix it.
little Slobovian stuff. All right, there
There
we
we
go.
go.
All right,
There we go.
gentlemen.
Now we're facing the right direction, and I'm on Jesus' side, so it's all good.
So let me introduce what we are going to do tonight. All you non existent people in the chat, all you Glenn Dannisons, and the only person in the chat right now, because obviously everyone in the community loves me. Thank you, Glenn.
I
Um,
announced it.
Yeah, so did
yeah.
I.
How
We've
come no
been
one's in
we've
my
been going back
chat?
and forth the
That's
whole
sad,
time.
guys.
Maybe if you created more memes.
Yeah, maybe if I talked about Bigfoot more people would show up. Oh, let's just do Dogman in every title. That'll get people coming. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no.
Yeah, I need Dogman in every title, and I need a hot female co-host.
Yeah,
And maybe I should just take my shirt off every episode. I don't
you
know.
should. No,
What's
you
that
absolutely
Oh,
say?
should. Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
going to advise against that right now.
Okay. So we are gathered here because of a previous podcast that Jason and I did a few months back called
Hmm.
Jason versus Dinosaurs. And if you folks at home have missed it, go back and watch it. But in that episode, Jason laid out his, I guess, biblical worldview on
Yeah.
the nature of dinosaurs and how they fit into the uh, biological family tree of life, right? Of Earth's biological history. And you were talking about, I guess it's fair to say that you're more of a young Earth creationist, right?
Yeah.
And so later that night, I had to do a show on Texas, like right after, like an
Hmm.
hour later after we ended. But yeah, folks, go back and watch Jason versus Dinosaurs. And then later that night, I was on a show for Tex with our esteemed colleague here, Randy. And then after the show, we were talking, and I was telling Tex and Randy about the show I had done a couple hours prior with Jason about Jason versus Dinosaurs. And I explained Jason's worldview to Tex and Randy. And the immediate response that I heard from Randy's lips was, "Boy, that's the stupidest shit I ever heard."
I
And I
would
was like,
never say
"Oh."
something like that.
Randall
And
would
so,
never. Randall would
and
never use that sort of language.
I
Ever.
was like, "Oh, really? Well, Mr. Randy, would you like to come on my show and tell that to Jason's face?" And then Randy was like, "Oh, hell yeah, I will." So then later that night,
Such
I
language he's
called.
making up for you, Randall. I'm shocked that he would put these kinds of
I
phrases
have
in your
no
mouth.
recollection of any of these things he's talking about. So,
Yeah, and for people who don't know Randy's background, he's a science guy. He's a science dude. He did like chemistry and shit for like the military and stuff. I remember you guys did that train derailment episode, and
mhm.
Randy came in with them science bombs, right?
Hmm.
Randy comes in with the science bombs. Jason comes in with them Bible bombs, right? So Randy is the science dude. So I asked Randy, "Hey, do you want to come on and tell that to Jason's freaking face?" And Randy was like, "Hell yeah." So then later that night, as soon as I got off, I immediately called Jason and I was like, "Hey, Jason, I just got done with texting Randy. And guess what Randy just said? He said, "What everything you just said about dinosaurs was the dumbest shit he ever heard." And for the folks listening at home, all I could hear was just heavy breathing on Jason's end.
That's because he was
Well,
snoring.
so for yeah, and in fairness, I mean that's I do a lot of heavy breathing.
So tonight will be the battle of the ages. The unstoppable force of the biblical worldview meets the immovable object of the scientific worldview. And tonight, these two warriors shall clash. Now, I, Donnie Cho, am the special guest referee. So before we have this battle of the minds and of the wits, I am going to present to you folks some ground rules to you gentlemen and to the people listening at home. This is the kind of discussion that we shall have. Okay. Rule number 1. Obey the ref at all times. Follow the rules at all times. If any of you guys get out of line and the ref has to intercede or call a timeout,
Timeout. I got it right now. Why you got Stone Cold up there doing that?
because he's
Yeah, I was wondering
he's
the
the
same
ultimate special guest referee.
Yeah, but he's also not going to pay attention to any ref at all.
That's what I'm saying.
He's the epitome of the special guest referee.
This feels
Oh,
he
Lord.
feels rather counterintuitive for your goal here, Donald.
Yeah.
Okay. Rule number 2. Cussing is allowed and encouraged. Please,
On
by
your
all
channel?
means, if you
I
want to
mean,
drop an F-bomb or an S-bomb, if you want to
flabbergasted.
call each other a dirty effing SOB, by all means, it's
I
fine.
have spent
It's
too many
allowed.
years in the Army to learn to control this, so you do not get offended. It's okay.
Yeah, this isn't some fucking Bigfoot nerd show where everyone's got to watch their language. No, this is Doncho says stuff, baby.
You
We say
got
whatever
something
the fuck
against
we want.
nerds?
That's what I'm hearing.
We're about to have an issue with the
Ooh, we
referee
got a
in a
show
minute.
about Dogman. We got to watch our language for all the kids who are listening at home. Yeah, what kids? What kids? Screw those stupid kids. They should be playing Minecraft or some shit.
Wait,
Okay.
what?
They should
See,
be doing
there's
something
the
productive
problem.
with their lives, not watching this show.
Yeah, that ain't no
Rule
lie.
number
They're watching
3.
this show. They need help.
Mm-hmm.
No low blows. Keep it clean. No personal insults. And that means you, Jason McLean. That means you. Because for
Ooh, all
people who
bets are
don't
off
know,
now.
okay,
Yeah.
a little peek behind the curtains is a I've seen Jason get into arguments and debates with people, and yeah, he does have a tendency whenever he's got his back against the ropes, whenever he's on the defensive, you have a tendency to swing for them low shots, Jason McLean, and those kinds of tactics are not honorable, and they're not welcome here. So no low blows, Jason.
First of all, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Secondly, I believe it was Confucius himself who famously said, "Play to win."
Well,
So
my
what are you going to
question
do,
is,
John?
do
You
I
can't
have a
go
5
against the
count?
wisdom of, yeah. You get a 5 count.
Don't I get a 5 count?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, and the
I
last
choke
rule.
until-
Speaking of low blows, the last rule. No remarks about physical appearance, gentlemen. This ain't a beauty contest.
Well, see, now you just killed my entire argument.
Don't call each other ugly or fat or short or having a stupid face, okay?
Hey, how come all that was all geared at me? What the hell?
Yeah. Well, let's be honest.
Obviously, he's got the rep in his pocket over there.
Yeah. Well, plus,
right.
I mean, let's be. This feels very. I mean, really, it feels like Monday's episode has affected you with your sensitivity to people's appearance now.
I know how you get, Jason. I know how you get.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Do I?
when you get on the defensive, you get a little bit mean.
Well, but I'm not going to be on defensive tonight.
I'm just saying, no yellow cards. No,
okay.
Don't
no,
foul.
we're going for full-blown reds. We ain't messing
You're like
with
one
yellow.
of those NBA players who just goes around elbowing people in the face, and everyone's like, "Hey, you can't be
Rodman.
doing that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, someone's got to be the bad boy in
You're
this
the
community.
Dennis Rodman of scholarly debate, Jason McLean. Okay. So,
Didn't he marry Carmen Electra at one point?
Yes, I believe he did.
Yeah.
Like 30 seconds until she wised up.
So, so those are the rules. You can feel free to cuss. You can, I guess, light insults, but again, keep it above the belt. No talking about each other's mamas. No making fun of each other's appearances. You can cuss. You can scream. Also, no crying. Okay, that's the other thing. Don't cry, gentlemen. All right.
Okay, that's it. You're just putting entirely too much on me now.
All right.
This feels really disrespectful to Randall.
Exactly.
So, I shall decide that since Jason had, most of the floor during that last episode, Jason versus Dinosaurs, I will let Randy have the first shot.
Okay.
Randy, you may have the floor and give your thoughts on Jason's own worldview about dinosaurs and shit.
Well, I respect Mr. McLean, 100%. And he makes a lot of valid arguments for his viewpoint. Me personally, coming from science, I also have my viewpoints where I believe, when looking at all evidence, that the dinosaurs disappeared from the earth approximately 65 million years ago. What caused their disappearance? Nobody can say for sure. That being said, there is a layer of iridium throughout the Earth's mantle and crust that shows at 65 million years that was the cutoff line. There is no fossilized record after that point. So
Damn.
at that point, I have to look at and say something at that point of roughly 65 million years ago caused the dinosaurs' extinction, a mass extinction. And as I'm looking at Neil deGrasse Tyson over the top of your head, I think back to Cosmos and think about how many mass extinction events there were in not in human history, in Earth's history. And as far as I know, right now there have been 5.
All right, Jason.
With that,
Oh no, I want him to. He's still going. I'd like to hear.
oh
his-
no, I was saying with that 65 million years ago was actually not the last one. The last one happened approximately, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 450,000 years ago with an ice age.
Is it my?
So that's where I stand on
yeah.
it.
Jason's got bombs ready. Oh,
Well,
Dan-
I
Randy
thought you'd be a little more
he
directed.
started pretty low key there. I know he's saving up. He's saving up the bombs. Okay,
Mhm.
Jason.
Well, again,
You're
I would
moving.
like to. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to Randall for taking the time to speak with us today. He is a very busy man, and in many ways and not in many ways, he just simply is the unsung hero of the Texas Front Porch Crew and KPNL Radio. This man does so much behind the scenes. Most of y'all you can't understand how valuable this man is to all of us and treasured. I count him amongst one of my closer friends, and I find his insights very valuable. In fact, we were just talking today about some things. We have many similar interests and histories, and I value his and respect his opinion. Where I think that perhaps Randall is incorrect today is one, and I think this is a common misconception and sort of viewpoint that modern media and academia has created, which is the idea that science is a viewpoint. It is not. Science is a tool. It is a method and process by which facts can be evaluated, measured, and observed. Scientists, however, come to conclusions. The history of science is that it's the best we can do with the information and technology that is available at the time. It is ever growing, it is ever expanding, and therefore has always had to, whatever conclusions there were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago have by and large had to be overhauled as new information is gathered.
Yes.
And so all information, all conclusions need to be held with an open hand. And when it comes to the question of origins, the problem is we are dealing with a question of history. The thing about history is science cannot determine what you cannot scientifically confirm history. What you can do is use science to confirm whether or not a document could be from that time. You can't use science to necessarily validate the text on, say, a page saying that Napoleon was at Waterloo. Rather, you could simply say that this document came from that time frame, right? So the question of origins, the question of history is a historical one, which means no matter what position you're coming from, we are trying our best to use science to help reconstruct from what we've seen, from what we can actually see and observe. And that is where I think we will draw different conclusions, because each side is going to point at different facts in order to achieve their position. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to reconstruct something that has occurred in the past, which is simply really outside the vein of science.
Yes.
Mr. Randall, do you have
I
something to
agree.
say to Jason?
I agree 100% with him right there. He is so eloquent and
Mhm.
explained that viewpoint perfectly. Science is a tool.
Yeah.
scientists are just as fallible as anybody else to their own greed, their own egos. They
Mhm.
will change things to make it look like they created something or they figured something out that they didn't have anything to do with. They just happened to be there at the right place, right time to see it. But we did all this research. Well, probably you didn't do all that research. Your people underneath you did all that research for you.
Yes.
And that's why I like people honestly, and I will fight with Neil deGrasse Tyson to this day about Pluto. Pluto is a planet, whether anybody likes
Yes.
it or whether anybody doesn't. And that just
Am-
comes from my days in elementary school. So
Amen, Randy. Amen.
yes. So, but the man studied the cosmos and astrophysics under Carl Sagan, who could not have been the the most qualified teacher to get him into the field he was in. He was wanting to get into.
Yes.
Now, as far as what we're talking about as a timeline of history, again, with science, you have an educated guess, which is called a hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
You have to test it. You have to gather facts. You have to test your hypothesis. And if your hypothesis cannot be proven, but most likely would be correct, it is then because it becomes a theory. Theories take years upon years to prove. That's why everything that Stephen Hawking came out with his theory of everything book and about the event horizons, is it probably right? Most likely. The math supports it, but we don't know it for a fact. So therefore it's a theory.
Yes. Well, there's several things that Einstein spoke about in the 30s that have
Even the
only
relativity. Yeah.
yeah. Well, but there were even questions of things like gravity waves that
Yes.
Einstein theorized that we only are now able to validate.
Mhm.
So to Randall's point, and I think this is one of those things that we in our instant microwave world, we tend to forget that true science takes time.
Yes.
And anytime we have these new discoveries, it's like, well, pump the brakes there. We need to allow the proper time for things to be explored, taken apart, observed. Unfortunately, too many people jump to so many conclusions incorrectly on either side of this debate, to be honest, right? And it's unfortunate. So many things take time, and we need to allow that time to happen. Speaking of time, one of the things, and again, Carl Sagan. I grew up on Carl Sagan as well, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he speaks within his field, is immaculate. I mean, the man's brilliant. No, you certainly can't argue that. In particularly in the field that he specialized in, he tends to get into trouble when he steps outside that field. However,
See, I was cool with Neil deGrasse Tyson until he started talking shit about UFOs, and I'm like, yo, we out, son. We out. Don't be talking about my UFOs like that.
Well, again, Pluto. So again, Randall and I will have words with Mr. deGrasse Tyson when for on Pluto's behalf. And I'm sorry, but a dwarf planet just feels so politically incorrect. Genuinely.
Technically speaking, it's a binary planetary system of its own.
Right, because its moon is large enough that they have a thing. But anyway, that's unfortunately that's too
We'll
far.
talk about that on a different episode.
Yeah, that's a different episode. We can have our defense of Pluto in a future date.
Yes.
So going back to Randall's point, I would suggest that one of the great issues, again, it's not just people or scientists or anyone coming at it with ego or with or even mal or ill intent or greed. Those, yes, that all and again, that exists on all fields.
Yes.
Right. In fact, they're creationists that I've personally called on the carpet because they have jumped to incorrect conclusions. Again, all of those things. However,
so what are some weird conclusions that creationists have said to you where you were like,
again,
I don't think so?
Well, again, that's neither here nor there at the moment.
I'm curious now.
Well, we can, again, that could be a whole episode. However, my point here is that biases and presuppositions can often be just as dangerous and just as deleterious to coming to an accurate interpretation of data as anything can be. In fact, oftentimes what we find is that the data to support support a more accurate conclusion pre-existed. The problem is oftentimes the presuppositions that the scientists were bringing to the question cause them to misinterpret the data itself. It wasn't oftentimes it isn't necessarily development in technology, but rather the opinions of people. It was I forget who said this. I know Einstein mentioned it as well. It's an older concept, but they said that science advances with at the grave site, meaning that as every generation, essentially, once every generation has its preconceived ideas, it has its norms, it has its means, it has its themes, and unfortunately, that older generation starts to go away for the newer material to come out. As I think Randall and I have actually had this conversation on Einstein when he first came out. Every mathematician in the world thought he was nuts, except for one man.
Yep.
Unfortunately, oftentimes these presuppositions get in the way of properly interpreting data. And I would suggest that really the issue is not the data; it is the presuppositions that everyone is looking at, which causes us to lean towards one set of data over the other.
Yeah, they're not taking an objective view to the data. They're literally wanting it to fit into what they want it to fit into.
Yes.
Well, can't you say that about Bible people then, who are like,
Of course you can.
oppose
Can I bring
everything
up
about like
several
evolution?
televangelists?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about televangelists. That line starts here and wraps around the block.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm every other person on that block. That having been said, yes, in fact, I started off my conversation with this is on both sides.
Yes.
In fact, what is
All
the
the
number
way.
one thing that I like to say on every episode that I'm given a chance to, which is that I believe all data. The problem is we are trying to put together a puzzle, and all the pieces aren't on the table. Everyone's holding back pieces, and there's pieces we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Until we have all the pieces on the table, we can't even really begin to understand the puzzle that we're putting together. So yes, and I would argue that a lot of the conversation that will be had tonight, it's less about the data itself. Rather, it will be about interpretation of said data.
Yes. And
All
there will be
right.
years to come.
And technically, Jose, it was Neil deGrasse Tyson who has misgendered Pluto. Although, let's be honest, it isn't his fault that Pluto has been terribly misgendered.
I think that he's talking about Glennon and the binary planet.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Talking about.
I saw that, but I figured that one was funnier.
We're going to sit there and be progressive on this one, okay?
Mm-hmm. I see it.
All right. So Randy, what do you think? Right.
I think about a lot of stuff.
Science has obviously had, it's not perfect, right?
No,
It's
nothing
had its
is
fuck
perfect.
ups. It's had some.
Yep.
There's some scientists who I know for a fact have been like straight up dicks. Also, some like religious scholars as well. There's always scandal and allegations of this guy's actually an asshole, right? It's both sides, right?
Well,
both sides.
Let's just take archaeology as an anthropology as a case in point, and a class study or a subject area study. That particular field, anthropology and archaeology, is full of the most cutthroat piece of crap human beings you'd ever want to meet, because they will literally sit there and cut each other's throat to make sure their name gets in the papers.
Yes.
And I can relay a story, but I won't on the air, about a gentleman that we all know that told me stories of an archaeologist that everything had to stop when something was found to make sure he was there for the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
that is not an uncommon story.
No.
And it's not just the one, and I assure you it's not just the one. Again,
no.
To Randall's point, there's a reason I didn't go into archaeology, because I got a really good look at it. And it's very much not what it appears to be. In fact, that's one of the main reasons I didn't get into it, was, though without saying it, the guy was basically my minor. He essentially explained how to fake a finding that doesn't fit the worldview you want to be coming from.
Yeah.
And that is something that happens And that happens quite frequently. And
Damn.
in fact, I literally was having this conversation with Danielle from Hidden Existence, and everyone knows Danielle. We were talking about this, that the people, as I throw my pencil around, the people who are the least likely to get something right as far as how people lived and how things were used in antiquity are archaeologists.
Yes.
And often, again, because it comes back to they are working from conclusions of their own biases.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
again, this goes back to oftentimes, again, when we will get to the data, but it's the simple fact of the matter is that all of this is not just that it's imperfect. It's imperfect because we are imperfect. We have limited data, and even the data that we have can be interpreted from many different views. So oftentimes it's going to be, how do we reconcile these things? Because for one point, there's a counterpoint. And until we're able to have a full conversation with all viewpoints heard, all data on the table, it's going to be very hard to really resolve this. And as I've said many, many times, ultimately, this is not really science versus religion. It's scientism, a form of religion, versus religion in many cases.
You
Makes
agree,
sense.
Randy?
Actually,
Are
yes.
you part
I
of the
mean,
Church of Scientism?
well, there technically kind of is a church of scientism already. It's the Christian Science bunch that literally they go a lot with science, but they also have faith-based activities that help back up their science. Now, do I agree with some of their findings? No, I don't. But I don't agree with the preachers that dance with rattlesnakes either. So it is what it is.
Yes,
I think we didn't do our throwdown like we were talking, and I think it got a
You
couple
guys are
people
all
out there mad
agreeing
about
with
it.
each other and shit. What the hell? Damn.
But we love each other.
Meanwhile, when the cameras are off, you guys are slinging mud at each other left and right. That's
We would
fucked up,
never do
guys.
that. I don't know where you get all these facts from. This
the
has been a setup by this referee since the
I
minute
feel
we
attacked.
started.
I feel
Yes.
attacked here. Honestly,
I feel
I'm shocked.
I don't get this. I mean,
This
you just want us to come in here and take whatever you want to throw at us, don't you? Is that what it is?
the vile, truly the vile venom that is coming from Donald today is, I'm
Me,
sorry,
I'm
audience.
just a guest referee.
I'm shocked.
I'm the special
I'm
guest
in shock.
referee.
Well,
I'm
and
just
you
here to
put a
enforce the
picture
rules.
of stinking Stone Cold up, so yeah, that makes you a rattlesnake.
Stone
So
Cold was the
disappointed in
ultimate
you,
guest
Tony.
referee, and that is what I strive for. The special guest.
I don't get this. I don't understand. I think the referee has been the problem the whole way. I think he's been pitting this since you did your show with him, and he's been playing all ends against the middle.
I think he has, because I know for a fact that the language that
I'll give you my
used
point of view
when we
then.
were talking, I know that would never come out of your mouth. So
wait. Special referees are not. They're seen, not heard. Be quiet over there. Okay, now go ahead.
All right.
Yes. No, I agree with you, Randall. I think we're being set up here. Is this, have you set us up for some sort of tryst? What is up with this, Donald? This is supposed to be an intellectual exercise of understanding and progress, and it feels like you just want to fight.
I wasn't the one with them fighting words.
Weren't you though? Weren't you?
Mr. Randy said to me, after I explained to him how I thought you thought that dinosaurs were here up until what, 6,000 years ago?
Well, again, I'm rather. I would suggest that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. Yes. Again, the timing is large. I'm largely agnostic on that, because again, that's a how, not a why. But this is, I think you're avoiding the point here. Just it feels like you wanted to make this far more of an entertainment or a bout or some sort of spectacle.
I'm kind of with Ryan over there. Now that I look at that, Ryan says Donnie was paid off by the McMahons. What the heck?
Donald, you would
Vince
never.
and I do have the birthday, August 24th. We're the same sign and everything.
Who what?
Vince McMahon and I have the exact same birthday. I have the same birthday as Vince McMahon and Dave Chappelle.
Now that I think about it, there was that one storyline at one time about Vince McMahon's long lost son.
Oh, yes. Yes, you're right.
He did go to Korea a lot too.
He did. He really did. Yes.
Come to think of it,
Big
he
initiative.
kind of got the eyebrows that Vince has got now. And if anybody hasn't seen the new Vince McMahon, trust me, go out there and look, and you'll wonder what the heck happened to the dude.
And I too also once lived in North Carolina.
Oh yeah. So, East Carolina fostered a bunch of stuff, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
we've
how
been.
about this,
I think
Randy?
we've been set up. I think we have been
we
set up.
have.
How about this,
I'm
Randy? What do you think of the London Hammer? What are your thoughts on that thing? You know about it, right?
The what?
The London Hammer.
No.
I think he's trying. I think he's trying to avoid what we've discovered here. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm
What?
confused.
What? Some
I was talking
realization
about.
that science and religion are all in the same boat? Ooh, how profound.
I don't
You know,
know what you're
Einstein fucked
talking
his
about.
cousin, right?
You did what to who?
Yeah. What did you do, Donnie?
Yeah, I'm just saying Einstein also fucked his cousin. People fail to mention that.
I have
He
no
hooked up with
earthly
his
idea what he's
cousin.
talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's rather strong language to use for a show like
Yeah,
this.
I mean,
It's my goddamn show.
it is. I thought I was signing
What?
up for an actual intellectual conversation.
Yeah.
No, see, Danny was like, this conversation is too highbrow for me. That is my job, is to bring it down to the ground.
Oh,
Make it
got
more
you.
grounded.
Oh.
I'm the grounder.
Okay, so you grounder, or we're. How should I put this without really getting into it? I'm about to go Jerry Springer.
Oh,
Go for it.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, no, I ain't doing it. I won't
There you
lower
go.
myself.
Nor should you. Nor should you. I'm so disappointed in you, Donald.
Why me?
We were trying. We were brought here under the auspices that this would be a time of intellectual curiosity and discussion. It just feels like you want nothing more than vapid conflict.
Me? No, that's some pro wrestling stuff. This is a platform for intellectual discussion and deep
you
philosophical topics and discourse, sir. And I am here to facilitate that, sir. Anyway, let's
I'm
talk
starting to wonder
more.
about this now.
Let's talk about
So
some more Bible verse science stuff.
I'm going to share with you now. We need to put this here so he can see this. Let's see here. I will let him decide to bring that up so we can verify. Let's look at the eyes. Let's look at the eyebrows. Let's look at the mustache. This is what he looks like now.
Yeah, I see it.
You see it, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of leaning that way, aren't we now?
That's
Sorry,
yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
that one.
Like I wouldn't have necessarily come to that conclusion on my own, but I again presented with the evidence. I think you're right. I think this is leading. I think this is leading.
Okay, let me tell you guys an actual story I heard about not Abraham Lincoln. What the fuck, Albert Einstein.
Well,
okay, this is a legit
was he
story,
a vampire
right?
hunter?
Okay, so I knew. So I used to live right by Princeton. You know, that's where he was based out of, right? So where I grew up in New Jersey was like the next town over. And then when I was right out of college, my first job was actually in Princeton, like right around where Einstein would did his thing. And so one of the ladies who worked there was like this much older lady, right? She was in her 60s at the time. And so she was telling me about how when she was growing up in Princeton, everyone knew who Einstein was at that point. Right. He was a celebrity there. And she remembered seeing him as a little girl. And I was like, yo, what was Einstein like for reals? And she was like, my memory of him, because everyone would see him all the time. See, so Princeton is like a college town, right? There's this giant university, but then the college town, like the actual town of the university, it's all like on one side. And there's like this one main street, right? And that's it. And so when Einstein would walk up and down this main street, I mean, everyone saw him and everyone knew who he was, right? And he would just walk up and down every day with his head down, muttering to himself, kind of like in his own head, right? Like,
right.
And she told me that one of the secrets that she knew about him that a lot of people don't know is that when he was walking up and down, his wife would follow behind him. And the reason why she would follow behind him while he was just by himself, just walking up and down with his head down, muttering to himself, was because she would have to, when his shoelaces got untied, Einstein would stop, and then she would have to like run up in front of him and then tie his shoes. And then he would go back to walking because homeboy didn't know how to tie his shoes.
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard.
that
I haven't
story.
heard that specific story about his
Yeah.
wife, but yeah, I'd heard that he didn't know how to tie his shoes.
I heard, he was dyslexic. He worked at the patent office at one time too, but nothing like Edison did, obviously. But he actually had a big issue with taking care of himself. It's like, I want to say idiot savant. Of course, anybody nowadays is going to look at it, oh, he was autistic. He was autistic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, maybe, who knows? But kids that run around the block too fast are autistic nowadays. So it's too much of a crutch as far as I'm concerned. So
yeah,
he definitely had some social skill issues. Let's put it that way.
Yep. But yeah, I've heard that as well. That he was that he just didn't know how to tie his shoes. And again, I do wonder though how how often these stories are based on a kernel of truth. Like perhaps he couldn't do it later in life. Again, it may have been more of a physicality thing rather than he just didn't know how to tie his shoes. But again, yeah, I've definitely heard that story, and often to Randy's point, a lot people who have the greatest insights often don't understand other parts of the world or other parts of life. I think that's, and I think that's almost by necessity. In order to really, in order to really have insight into a thing, you have to understand on a level most people can't have. And if you have, and to have that kind of understanding almost requires your brain to not be able to process other aspects of life. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised to find that he really couldn't tie his shoes. Right. There's other
It didn't really
aspects.
surprise me that much because
Social
a guy that smart had to have like some weird quirk about him, right?
Almost all of them do. I mean, look
Yeah,
at
you have to.
Oppenheimer. Look at Werner von Braun. All of them had little idiosyncrasies that caused issues in their personal lives. So
Yes.
Yeah, Stephen Hawking.
yeah, his was ALS, but he was also, as much as it surprised me, and the more research he did, one of the biggest womanizers you'd ever want to see.
Yeah,
that dude was a hornball.
Exactly.
I can't remember his name. The mathematician. He won. He ended up winning the Nobel Prize. But the movie A Beautiful Mind is based on it, and essentially he was.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but it was schizophrenia.
Barry, but I can't remember Barry or something like that. But
yes,
anyway.
I just couldn't remember. But yeah, it is. Again, I think there is one of those things where in order to be able to see those kinds of things, your brain just has to work a little bit differently, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, I boycotted that movie.
Why?
It took away the Oscar from Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. I was like, man, fuck this movie.
But it gave Ron Howard the first best director. So
that's what I'm saying. It's a great movie. It really is
it was a good movie. It really was a good movie.
Better than Lord of the Rings.
Oh well, no. Wait a second. I'm a Lord of the Rings fanatic myself. So yeah, I enjoyed every single one of those. And Return of the King.
Yeah, Fellowship lost out to Beautiful Minds.
Well,
that should piss me off.
Same thing with what was it? Was it Saving Private Ryan? Did it win? I can't remember now off the top of my head. There was a movie. I can't remember which one was with it, but when American Beauty came out.
Oh,
that is 2.5 hours of my life I will never get back.
Mm-hmm.
And I am stupider forever watching it.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
But that was Kevin Spacey's breakout role. Spacey.
No, I'm going to tell you right now. You know what Kevin Spacey's breakout role really was? The Negotiator. That was his breakout role.
I agree. Yeah.
I thought it was Usual Suspects that was his breakout role.
Yeah, you can call it that, but he was better in Negotiator than he was in any of those two. Either of those two right there.
No, he's 100% true. I think it. Wait, which one came first, Negotiator or Usual Suspects? I thought
Usual Suspects was first. Oh, okay. Negotiator came out about a year after that, I think, with Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah. No, and I think I do like that movie. I think Usual Suspects is the reason we get him in The Negotiator. But yeah, I mean, they're both great movies, and he's a great actor, despite the fact that he's, you know, what he is, a murderous sociopath. But yeah, no. Back to your.
So okay,
John Nash. Thank you, Glenn. John Nash. That was him. Glenn got it. Yeah.
So I'll be honest. I'll be real with you guys. Then we'll get real. You want to get real? I'll get real. All right. So with
We ain't been
regards
real
to
yet.
this
We've been
whole,
going after you. What are you
science
talking
versus
about?
religion debate, okay, I've always been of the mindset that there has to be a scenario where both fit, right? The whole God creating the earth in 7 days, Garden of Eden creating, you know, something out of nothing has to some, and then there's the whole scientific worldview, right? The billions of years, the Big Bang, the evolution of the earth, formation of the
Earth's about 4
planets,
billion years
gravity,
old.
you know, everything affecting everything, and then evolution and blah 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 blah, right? I always believe that there could be, or there might be, a scenario where both fit, right? Where both can be correct.
Well, yeah,
You know what I
it's
mean?
been
Like,
proven
for
a couple of
example,
times too.
one of the thoughts I had was, you know, they'll say like on the seventh day, on this, you know, God did this, on the third day, God did that, and I'm like, how? But what if a day to God is different than a day for us?
So okay, you're talking about okay, hold on. Randy, do you want to give up the act and just
we can do that
okay.
now.
Okay. We have been hold on.
You're giving up the act now?
Yeah.
What
No,
is
we
it?
have been doing the whole time. This whole thing we had this whole thing worked out. I was going to do the whole episode with it, but honestly, it's sort of derailed. So we'll go ahead.
We're good on other stuff now. So
yeah. So we're good. Okay.
I think we pissed off a few people that came to watch us fight. So
yeah. Oh no, no, Donnie. The entire thing was us putting on this whole episode to this point has been about us going after Donnie. We've been trying to get Donnie all riled up the entire time.
Well, you know what it is during the Attitude Era, the special guest referee almost invariably always wound up getting his ass
got
beat
involved.
at the match. It's true, right? At the end of every match, the special guest referee always wound up getting his ass beat.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and you're about to get doused in beer after I stun you. So here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so Donnie, what you're talking about is there's a lot of different flavors of it, but it's called theistic evolution.
Okay.
And honestly, I think Randy's probably a little bit
evolution. Why you gotta be hating on that?
Well, so okay, and I think Randy comes from that position where it's directed rather than random because we do absolutely agree. Like again, life coming from absolutely nothing, unguided, undirected, our place in the universe makes again the math on that is astronomically impossible. I mean, just the numbers are zero. So, and here's the thing: there is a version that I think does not, and I think there's a lot of, in fact, Michael Heiser would probably fall into this category. Where again, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 actually are compatible. That there was again, even 6,000 years ago, that you had Adam and Eve, but essentially what you're dealing with is that Genesis 1 is because again the point of Genesis 1 isn't how the earth was created, it's actually that God created it, and that because the point of Genesis 1, and really because it ends in Genesis 2, don't get me started on that, it's the seventh day is the point of the story, right? Because God rests in the universe that he creates, and if you were a Bronze Age person living in the Levant, that would click with you because a temple was where God would rest, right, to be with humans. What is being said in Genesis 1 and then 2 in the first couple of verses of chapter 2 is that God created the universe to be with us. That he doesn't require our hands to make a temple because he made this universe to be with us. Right? It was not a part of it was not by our doing. So many people would suggest that Genesis 1, when it talks about he makes humanity in Genesis 1 on the sixth day, what is being discussed is that yes, you have proto-humans, early humans, the evolution of humanity. In that, and then when we come to chapter 2, the story of Adam and Eve, that Adam is not actually specially created per se, but rather extracted from, because and they would point to a lot of Canaanite writings and really more Ugaritic and Akkadian writings, where a human is being pulled out of the greater. It's not that he was made from the dust, rather he was pulled from humans. That's more of an allusion to that, and that he was essentially the first human with a true soul, and that he was, and that his job was to be the high priest. Same thing with Eve, and that's the argument that they would make. I would disagree with that. Now, I will say this: it doesn't do violence to the text, which is why I'm not overly opposed to it. Because again, there's questions of hows and there's questions of whys, right?
Exactly.
And the Bible is more about why. In fact, Donnie knows about some of the conversation, knows a little bit about why I'm on this particular train of thought. But one of the things I've noticed is that God never gives you information that you are supposed to divine for yourself. Meaning that anything that science is what we can learn, right? Again, we learn how to make this pencil, how to turn the graphite into something usable through science, right? God doesn't give us science because we're supposed to find that out ourselves. Demons give us science and information because they're cheating, right? That's why, again, we've talked about the occult and high technology.
I thought that was the whole point of the demons giving magic powers and stuff.
Well, no, it's always about information. So it's about information about the physical world that we wouldn't ordinarily have, or that we were supposed to discover ourselves. God never gives us that information. He gives us the information we can't divine ourselves, right? Again, that's special revelation. It's about him and it's about what he wants. That we couldn't learn that on our own. That having been said, I would disagree with that because, and this is where it goes back, and genuinely, yes, the interpretation of data is the question here. I would disagree with that because it presumes, it's based on the presumption of information that is not actually confirmed. And one thing, because again, let's bypass things like the London hammer and polystrate fossils, stuff like that. Let's go to again, Randy, and again, all kayfabe and kidding aside. Yeah. Randy is like, again, he is trained in radiation. He's trained with chemical. Like, this man knows what he's talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why because honestly, I'm kind of out of as of a previous week, and Donnie knows why, I am really out of the whole debate thing, but I would never not talk to Randall about this because he's good.
Well, yeah.
But let's use really what I think are the key smoking guns that I think are one of those things that has not really been properly addressed, because as I did a whole episode on it, right? The greatest volume of hidden knowledge isn't behind the Vatican. It's not in some, it's not under some president's desk in some torture dungeon. It's behind
or some book of secrets.
Yeah. It's literally behind a paywall. And it's for academics to talk about and discuss and go over. That is the greatest source of hidden knowledge in the world.
Exactly.
Because there's so much information there that's talked about in high places in academia. It never gets to us. Michael Heiser himself even said, very famously, he's like, I'm not creating any of this. I'm just relaying the data that we have to the layman. Right. And again, because there are legitimate archaeological discoveries. I have problems with a lot of again, you want to have a problem with archaeologists? Again, you start behind me. But there are people doing good work, right? And there are discoveries made all the time that are really, really important, and we're not told this. So one of the things I would point out for me, that's sort of, again, there are no such things as smoking guns. People, again, I hate when people say, well, this is a smoking gun. No, it's not a smoking gun. It's a point of data that it needs to be discussed, right?
Exactly.
And so, like, for me, let's use C14, right? Carbon 14
carbon 14 dating.
When people talk about carbon dating, what they mean is, so carbon 12 is that's the stable carbon that life is based on. Exactly. Well, in the upper atmosphere, it is bombarded with cosmic rays like the Fantastic Four, and it becomes carbon 14. Gains those 2 electrons, and that is an unstable form of carbon, and it will degrade and has a half-life of about 5,730 years on average.
Exactly.
So if every 5,700 years, that's its half-life. That means half of the carbon 14 will have reverted back to carbon 12. And that's how we do carbon dating, right?
Yep.
And so, again, Randy's confirming. Again, that's
exactly how it works.
Now, the problem, and again, we can discuss problems with carbon dating, because I do think contamination of an object is far more common than people want it to think.
Yes.
Because what I love is when you get a carbon date you don't want, it's contaminated. When you get the carbon dating that you do want, it's not contaminated, right? It's a whole.
I agree.
That's a whole other
Shroud of Turin.
conversation.
Shroud of Turin is case in point.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't like paranormal and cryptid people do that shit too?
All the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
I mean, case like you said, the Shroud of Turin. How many different versions, and did they ever actually find it again to where they could do it, or they just had the little
Didn't
shards?
they carbon date the crap out of that thing?
Well,
Yeah,
so okay,
they've done it 4 or 5 or 10 times.
Yeah.
well, no, well, so here's the thing: they did it once, but the problem is it was multiple laboratories. The problem with and I don't want to go too far, but this is a great example, right?
Yeah.
The problem with carbon dating is it's only one piece of measurement, but the problem is the Shroud of Turin in the past has survived multiple fires inside. Like you can even see the damage on the shroud itself.
Exactly.
And every time it survived a fire, it was in a chest.
Yep.
And so you can actually see where it had been burned through. It's also been repaired.
Yeah.
So the problem is
with stuff from the 14th century. So
exactly. And so, like when you had the team in the 70s that went and did their studies, they came out and said this thing has to be legit, and they list their reasons. And they were on that thing. They had they planned for months when it was opened. They worked for 24 hours straight. I think they had it for 2 days.
Yes,
they slept in shifts so that they were always performing right.
Something, yeah.
And that team is the biggest critic of the carbon-14 dating because when you see them open it up, they are discussing right then and there where to take the measure, where to take the sample from.
Exactly.
And they're like, "Are you insane? You have to know that you're actually taking it from a piece that wasn't repaired and hadn't been exposed to fire, right?" And
because
so that's
it's gonna degrade it. It's
exactly
going to degrade it.
And the problem is it's going to throw it off because the problem is if it's a section, because there was a point in time where the shroud was cut and they sold pieces of it.
Yes.
It's almost as if the forces of the universe, like God, wanted his secrets, I don't know, shrouded.
Hence the reason.
I see what you did there.
That's just bad. That's just wrong. Anyway, it's kind of, well, yeah, okay, and the Holy Grail's a cup too, right? Yeah, it's just a cup, but has anybody ever found it?
Yeah. Well, and
where is the Shroud of Turin right now? Anyway, is it
Czech Republic, isn't it? And it's being housed still in Czech Republic.
No, it's in Turin, Italy.
Oh, so they still got it in Turin. They brought it back down.
It's never.
At one time, it was in Prague.
Can we actually go and see it? Like, is it on display?
Yeah, it's on display.
Yeah.
Okay.
But once again, now here's the other question that you have to ask yourself too: who knows how much carbon-14 was in that daggum shroud when it started?
So, okay, see, this is where I'm going. This is one of my fundamental problems with carbon-14 dating in general, is particularly things like people say, well, hold on, the dates I'm about to give, you're like, but isn't that greater than 6,000 years? Again, I'm sort of agnostic on all of that. But my point is, it is based on presuppositions. Everything that we call science is largely based on presuppositions, and those biases are what's causing a lot of these issues. But again, let's go back to my point about carbon-14 dating. So again, every 5,700 years, essentially half of whatever carbon-14 is in that
becomes carbon-12.
Organic, it becomes carbon-12. But whatever's in that formerly organic thing, it's going to become, it's gone. So within 10 half-lives, you're basically gone, and definitely by 20 half-lives, everything's carbon-12.
Yes,
right.
Other than a minuscule amount.
Right. I mean, it would be microscopic, but essentially, if you get beyond 150,000 years, there should be zero.
Yeah.
The problem is, and this has been discussed again for quite a while, the problem is we keep finding carbon-14, active carbon-14 in diamonds, in coal, and we're finding it in the biological unfossilized dinosaur bones that are being experimented on. And so in the tests that we're getting, like there was an ammonite that had some unfossil, again, that only came into like tens of thousands of years old. Between a lot of these things are coming between 20 and 50,000 years old. And again,
like the mammoth remains and such. Yes.
Yeah. Well, again, you would expect the mammoths to be thousands of years old, but the problem is like coal is supposed to be hundreds of millions of years old.
Supposed to be, yeah.
Diamonds are supposed to be between 1 and 3 billion years old.
Yep.
And so the fact that we find active carbon-14 is a problem with the dating method, which goes back to my point. We've got questions and part of this conversation that needs to be had. My point is, There's the presupposition is these things are old, and it's evidence that it's old. My problem is, then why are we carbon dating it and finding carbon where there shouldn't be carbon?
And
That's my
here's the other thing. But once again, you still don't know where that carbon started. You don't have a starting point for it. So they could say maybe that coal is, case in point, it is damn near 100% carbon, you know?
Yeah.
So how are you going to get that down over the course of millions of years? You're not going to get it down. It's just going to consistently stay that way. It's going to half-life down, but you've probably got so much to start with. You don't know what you started with. How are you going to know how much is supposed to be there?
Well, and so here's the thing. I completely agree. The problem is mainstream science is the one that's having problems with this. And one of the arguments that I read, I think it's actually an interesting thought, is that other radioactive items like uranium could be bombarding it. The problem is, in a laboratory setting, we've never shown that uranium has the ability to add that many electrons to the carbon-12 in order to create more carbon-14 that would throw off the test. That's the problem.
See, that's the physicist in me right there saying, or the chemist in me. Literally, you cannot. Physics and chemistry work hand in hand when it comes to uranium and radiation. You cannot, without certain situations and certain circumstances being met, uranium's never going to have that issue on anything. It's just going to be either a beta or gamma emitter is what it's going to be. And when it emits the beta, that's essentially just throwing off an electron. So when it throws off that electron's off, and that's called a beta wave. So once that beta wave goes out, does it force itself onto something? Not 99.9% of the time. I would say no. If it does, it's going to take something and go into more likely something along the lines of a CO2 versus a carbon monoxide versus carbon dioxide, because monoxide will convert to dioxide if a spare electron is present. It will automatically do it because it puts it in a state of balance.
Yes, because it wants to be, right?
Yeah, they want to be in balance, so it's just natural.
Yeah. So this goes back to my point being, there is the presupposition of age, and that's my problem. We are finding carbon-14 where it really just shouldn't exist. And again, we'll throw in that contamination exists. The problem is we're beyond the point of contamination. We're to the point of this is a problem. There are presuppositions that are suggesting that this stuff's old, and that's why it has to be old. But the problem is we aren't showing in a lab that it is old. In fact, what we're showing is in a lab, we are looking at thousands, not millions or even billions of years in some of these things.
Well, but Puck says says it right over there. It works because they dated some things from the 15th century knowing what they were supposed to be and what it should be. So they had a set a control group. Let's call it that way. A control group that they
Puck
could work
knows his stuff about that. He's a blacksmith, so
and I understand 100% what he's talking about, but for lack of a better term, it's what we've got. Unfortunately, at this point in time, this is what we have to work with. So we have to accept, once again, now they're going to say, oh, well, this is fact. No, it's theory, because once again, you get different results every time it's tested. Okay. So contamination, not contaminated. It's the same thing with DNA. Contamination, not contaminated. Who knows what happened? But the same.
Jason, let me ask you. I'm curious. When so when do you think carbon dating is actually useful or important?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. And going back to Puck's thing, yes, we know it works. The problem is it works until it doesn't work, because because we have carbon dated things that we know when it occurred and it was way off, right?
Yeah.
So that is one of those problems, is it doesn't work. Again, it's like anything else. When you get into it, you're like, okay, it's largely true, but there are mistakes that are made, and not even mistakes. We don't really understand it as well as we would like to pretend we do, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's a good point of evidence for things within the last, honestly, I don't even like to go back more than 2,000 years, I think, is a solid cutoff for me. I'll allow for 3,000, but I think it's really the last 1,500 years. is where I think you start getting very. It seems to be far more valid more often than it's not in the last 1,500 years.
Okay, so for
But
like more recent
again,
historical
it
stuff.
can't be considered a smoking gun.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and again, if you want to go back 3,000 years, I'm fine with that. But it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, it can't be considered the smoking gun. That's my main point, right?
Like how people
If
say
you've got
DNA is
all this evidence over here that shows it should be, it's just one point of evidence. That's all it is. It cannot be. The problem is we've elevated it as like the premier thing. It's like, stop. It's not. You're making it more important than it is. You're not allowing for the variables and instances that we just can't explain. So within the last 1,500 years, I don't have a problem with most carbon dates. Even going back 3,000 years, because the problem is, and anyone will tell you, you go back that far, everyone's like, oh, it dates to 3,280 BC. No, it doesn't. They're saying it's between this period and this period. It's centuries.
Yes,
Carbon
that's
dating doesn't
exactly
give
what it should be.
Yeah, it doesn't give you a specific date, right?
And now you talk about the further back you go, you talk about a wider target area too, because let's say like with dinosaur fossils and stuff that they've been able to get carbon-14 from, they're not picking from 65,263,000 whatever BC to 65 million. No, they're saying between 65 million years and 75 million years. That's 10 million years there.
Well, and again, the problem is the carbon-14 dating that's coming out is between 20 and 50, right? Or they'll even go between 12 and 15. My point is, it's irrelevant. And again, this is my broader point: is fundamentally it's irrelevant what the date range is. The range is within the age of thousands of years, and we see the same issue with versus millions. Same thing with the fact that we find carbon-14 at all in coal is a problem. The fact that we're finding these things, that's the bigger problem. Is it shouldn't be there at all, period. Although, to Randy's point, I agree, and this is my fundamental problem with carbon-14, is it presumes the amount of carbon-14 in the starting base, A, has been consistent throughout all of time, and B, we can't have cross-contamination, we can't have these other things. So my thing is, a lot of these arguments presume facts that are not valid, that have not been validated, and really can't be in some cases. But another issue would be the fact that we do find active hemoglobin in dinosaur fossils. We find active DNA. That's another thing that's been coming up, because the problem is, again, we've looked at the half-life of DNA, and it's only 500 so years. Well, again, if you double that up or triple it up, quadruple it, it doesn't matter how far out you go for the half-life of the validity of DNA. We shouldn't have DNA, active hemoglobin, any of that in fossils.
That depends on the type of DNA too. You talk about mitochondrial versus active DNA versus,
right.
That's, once again, we're talking about different DNAs, where mitochondrial DNA can be traced back to fossils.
Right. Well, but again, the fact is it's still available. And the problem is that shouldn't be in a fossil. Mitochondrial DNA, it can be traced back because we're able to look at the changes in DNA. The problem is we have active DNA, just like we have active hemoglobin. The reason we know for a fact that birds are related to theropods is because we were able to take take active hemoglobin. Technically, it was heme, which is the base for hemoglobin. And we were able to expose it to chicken antigens, and they responded in a way that shows that they are related.
I thought they figured out they were related because of the anatomy.
Well,
like the position of the hip bones.
Well, that too. I mean, that's obviously another one, because how many years did us growing up, me and Jason, how many years did we sit there and see these shows that had T-Rex walking straight up with his tail dragging the ground?
Oh yeah, I saw all those. Yeah.
Well, the original Land of the Lost, case in point. It was what everybody thought this is what T-Rex looked. In fact, at our dinosaur park down in Glen Rose, Texas, right now, they still got the mock-ups down there from 1978 or whatever when they did them, and they're still the same. They haven't changed a thing on them.
They're standing.
Still love to go in there.
And by the way, I love those statues. They're my favorite thing.
Yes, they're the best thing that's down there by a long shot. But that's only because I remember it. So
are you guys pro feathered dinosaurs or nah?
I'm an either or. It doesn't make a difference to me, but I know that like raptors and T-Rex and such, they're definitely bird relatives. I.e.,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say chicken because, like I said, when you're talking about putting the chicken antigens and such with
Yeah.
it, now we're going full blown Jurassic World thing again. You're introducing a different DNA to something that may not have to do it, and it's actually taking the attributes.
Mhm.
Right.
And just like
Right.
the mathematician says,
Chaos.
nature always finds a way.
It does. No, yeah, no, I agree. And again, I'm with Randy. I think there's probably some that could have. Again, evidence. I again just make the argument, and let's see what the evidence actually is. I think there's a good
Yeah.
argument to be made for some for the theropods to have for some of the theropods to have had feathers. And again,
Yes.
we see this with like I bring this up all the time, right? The cockatrix, right?
Yeah.
Where it's a dragon that's supposed to have like the head and upper torso of a chicken, but then the
Mhm.
rest of the body is like a dragon. Well, okay. For hundreds of years, that looks completely ridiculous. But now today, we can look at them and say, well, hold on, that looks an awful lot like any of the number of theropods that we're looking at,
Yeah.
which would have those same features, which indicating they saw one living. So I'm perfectly okay with with certain theropods having feathers. Obviously, we know for a fact like Ankylosaur and Stegosaur and Triceratops didn't, because we actually have and hadrosaurs, because we actually have fossilized skin
Yeah.
for these, which again goes back to the broader point of that means rapid fossilization is a part of this story. Again,
Exactly.
I think that's outside of the conversation for today, but that
Yes.
means these things were rapidly fossilized. But yeah, the simple fact of the matter is we know a lot
At
of them didn't.
65 million years ago.
Not according to you, not according to carbon 14. But that's
At
the point, right?
65 million years ago.
See, so here it is, right? And this goes back to the point. We're going to point to different points of the data, right? And it comes back to
Yeah.
presuppositions and assumptions. I would point out
Exactly.
that people say, well, hold on, what about the universe? It's so big, the light wouldn't even get here if it was only thousands of years old. Whereas I would point out and say, well, hold on, we know, again, since this is the only time I'll actually use the Bible in this instance. Here we see all the time God creates things that have apparent age. The number one thing that you point to, Jesus's first recorded miracle is converting water into wine, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't just some boxed Franzia here, right? This was like the best wine. This is one of the comments space. Like, why did you save the best wine for the last? And as anyone who's ever been to a wine testing can tell you, you put the good wines up front, because by the time you've gone through the end, you want the cheap stuff in the back because you can't tell the difference, right?
Exactly. Just like beer.
You're exactly. That's you start with the good stuff, you end with the bad stuff, because by the time you get there, you can't tell the difference. Well, obviously, good wine requires prolonged aged. And it has to be aged appropriately. So we have the creation of age. I've got no problem with it, with the universe looking old. And by the way, every time we look at the universe and say, see, it has to be old, we keep finding data that says, okay, but this doesn't fit our model, right? Again, the telescope whose name I can never remember, JWS
James
or
Webb?
whatever.
James
Webb.
Webb Tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
new one.
Yeah. That's one of the things that really started freaking people out is, but again, this is why I won't hang my hat on anything, because again, it's new data that needs to be
Yeah.
reviewed. But they are finding a galaxy. They said, hey, here's a galaxy that's 13 billion light years away. So it should be 13 billion years old. And they found a supermassive black hole in the center of it. And the problem is the galaxy is too developed for the time frame that it's supposed to have.
Exactly.
So again, I go back to, but again, if God creates the universe old, or at least the age and state it needs to be to sustain our lives and our existence, and again, Randy would agree with me on this point. We are the entire universe. For us to be here makes no sense if this is random, because there's too many things that have to be just right for our existence to even be a thing, right? So the thing is, every time there's something that's supposed to be like, here's the death knell of this, it's like, okay, this isn't supposed to be here, right? We keep finding things that aren't supposed to be there according to the models. which is why I don't have, which is why like I said, I'm agnostic as to how old things are, which is why I just go back to let's default, right? I just default to Occam's razor. Do we see dinosaur things running around? I did. Do we have carbon-14 in bones? Yes. Do we have active DNA are we finding active DNA? Yes. Are we finding active? Yes. Do we have out-of-place artifacts found by actual archaeologists, not just random people? Yes. And that's trust me, that's a funny as hell story. Do we have all of these things? Yes. Okay. Then what we have suggests that the mainstream view is incompatible with what we actually find. Again, on the how, I just want everything on the table. But we don't have, but enough of the hows are inconsistent with the mainstream narrative to make me abandon what we see in the scripture. That's my point.
I'll say one thing, because I know you're getting ready to take it home. So
All right.
I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to quote a movie right now. Just because something ain't true don't mean you can't believe in it.
I like that quote, by the way.
That's a good way to end the show. I like that.
You know where it came
before
from,
we
right?
head out, I would just like to add one final thought before we go. Pluto is not a fucking planet. It's a Kuiper Belt object. You guys are aware that what the Kuiper
now
Belt
wait a
is,
second.
right?
Now we're really about to fly. All right, come on.
All right.
It's not a planet.
Now
bring
it's
it.
smaller
Let me
than our
explain something to
moon.
you.
For
Bring
Christ's
it,
sake.
Jersey boy.
Let me explain something to you, Ricky.
You know, there's a Kuiper Belt, right? Where all this other
I know
stuff.
there's a Kuiper Belt. And
Yeah.
where is it located in reference to Pluto?
Yes.
It's part of that.
And
Okay, you know what? All right.
Okay.
Pluto is a planet like Delaware is a state. All right. We all call Delaware a state, but deep down inside, we know Delaware ain't a real state. That's Pluto.
You're conflating, because I agree with you on that. But we're conflating. You're
No.
conflating, sir.
Pluto's the
You're
Delaware planet.
Pluto is
It ain't a real
a
planet.
valid planet. It is not.
Glenn, you got that right. Hang on. Glenn got that right. Here. This is what I got for you on that one. All right.
Oh, here it came. I didn't realize. Yep. All right, folks. And with that, we are out. Peace.